welcome into the final show of the week here on the GSMC Dead Ball Sports Podcast, brought to you as always by the GSMC Sports Network. My name is Christopher Shepard. Happy Friday to you all. And to conclude the week here on the show, we have a great one ahead, starting off with a couple of NFL free agency topics and questions to address, particularly concerning the 5 teams under the most pressure headed into this free agency cycle, even with the explosion in the salary cap rather. A lot of questions to be asked for certain teams, and specifically a question that could be concerning for the 49ers. What does a Brock Purdy deal look like? And now that you know, you kind of have a basic foundation for these kind of quarterbacks resetting the market. And so those will be some questions that we address and answer today. But of course, we're going to be recapping a thrilling conclusion to the Four Nations face-off. Incredible overtime game won by, of course, perhaps the most talented player on the ice, Connor McDavid. We're looking at the Knicks-Cavs, one of 3 games in the stretch run of the season that could be pivotal in terms of playoff seedings for both respective teams. And last but not least, we're looking at the best games in college basketball this weekend, a lot of important ones that could also determine seeding come March Madness. But before we get into any of that fun stuff, I do want to remind you, as always, to like, follow, and subscribe to the show and the network if you haven't done so already, to keep up to date with all our new content. But if you want to contribute and interact with our shows a little bit more directly whilst we are live streaming, consider availing yourselves of the Super Chat, Super Thanks, and Super Stickers features here on YouTube as always. Whether it be your opinions, feedback, input you have, or even tips and donations, it is all genuinely appreciated by those concerned within the network, not just myself and my own personal show, but others as well. It just makes it that much better when you, our faithful audience, are contributing to our shows. Without further ado, let's jump right into the first topic of today, talking about one of the free agency segments we are going to have on today's show, specifically concerning the San Francisco 49ers and what kind of extension could be coming for Brock Purdy. Remember, this is someone who was the last pick in the draft about 3 to 4 years ago, only making about $1.1 million in base salary at this current moment in time, but eligible for a big contract extension. But when you look at the 49ers organizationally, there are still so many questions, so many loose ends to tie up outside of Purdy that you kind of lose your, I don't know how to put it, lose your kind of senses when it comes to this Purdy deal. Because the 49ers have so many other unrestricted free agents that contribute to the success of this team. Because, mark my words, the 49ers championship window is rapidly closing. In fact, it might have already closed. And so, while Brock Purdy, it's integral to tie him to this team for the foreseeable future if you believe he's the right guy, there are still so many other players. For example, Hufanga, Ward, Greenlaw defensively, and so many players on this offensive line who will have contract questions upcoming as well to protect Brock Purdy if he is, in fact, your franchise quarterback, that have to be answered as well. So I feel like this Purdy extension, while it's definitely going to be the pressing issue for the 49ers, there are still so many things to juggle within this organization that this kind of took a back burner. But I want to bring it to the forefront today because of this extension, you're now looking at a 49ers team that will have a lot of unrestricted free agents, a lot of players at their specific positions who are earning the highest pay in the league at their respective positions, and thus kind of creating this weird purgatory of semi-contention, perhaps, for the 49ers. So without further ado, let us jump into the hypotheticals of this deal. Because I do believe that the reason why a lot of people don't find this extension as pressing as perhaps other extensions in years past for guys like Trevor and Tua is because the 49ers can play the long game here. Because Purdy is earning a base salary next year of $1.1 million, they don't have to tie him down immediately. They can wait it out, play the long game with him, and then tie him down through a franchise tag after 2025, and kind of play it by ear. Much like what the Packers kind of did with Jordan Love, where they waited 1 year and then reworked his contract from there. So if that's the direction they want to go in, it could be a smarter move in the long run in terms of how they kind of plan financially as well. Because when I look at Purdy, is he really the guy who's going to continue to be your franchise QB? He rapidly regressed this year. He went from 4th in QBR to 10th this past year. He dropped dramatically in terms of completion percentage, in terms of touchdown passes, yards per attempt, and so on and so forth. So you got to be concerned about that. And a big part as to why Brock Purdy has been successful in the 49ers scheme has been because of the players around him. And that's going to become a point of concern if you start to not necessarily tie down other pieces around your franchise quarterback. So if I was the 49ers GM, what I would do is have him stay on this $1.1 million base salary and then wait it out for another year and then tie him down to the franchise tag. Because then, if he's not up to snuff, then we can just cut ties with him. And then we can focus on other players who either aren't up to snuff either, or just try and rebuild this team from the ground up. Because that's kind of where I see the 49ers now. They're no longer at the point where this is an integral extension for Brock Purdy. Because after last season, it's clear that the NL West is getting better, and San Fran is going to be the team in the division with a lot of questions surrounding it. It's not just Purdy and his performance. It's the players who helped him to this point, to get to this point, to have a chance to have a lofty extension. And so that's the reason why it's critical that the 49ers start to decipher how they're going to continue to build around Purdy if they're investing that much money into him, because it's now or never. And their championship window is closer to being closed than people might have expected. So let's talk about certain players who the 49ers can either cut ties with or choose to extend. Because right now, they currently have, I believe, 9 players in the top 15 of the highest pay at their respective positions. And those are guys like McCaffrey, guys like Bosa, guys like Williams. And all those guys, what they had in common was that their contract extensions were holdouts. They waited for maximum money. The 49ers are hedging their bets on Brock Purdy signing a little bit more soon in the cycle than those other guys. But it's the amount of money that's going to be very pressing and very telling of how the 49ers not only view him, but certain players they could cut ties with in terms of not necessarily staying within the realm of a friendly cap space, even with the salary cap explosion happening. So I feel Brock Purdy is right around that $55 million to $60 million threshold. He's not going to be a guy who deserves it, in my opinion, but he's right there in terms of the threshold. He has a lot of leverage in terms of this extension, but the reason why I feel the 49ers are wanting to get this deal done as soon as possible, and Brock Purdy might be on the same page, is because they might want to start considering how to build around Purdy. I feel like a lot of offensive linemen are slated to either hit free agency or be eligible for extensions along this line You have some guys who are younger up front there. And then in terms of his weapons, George Kittle's eligible for an extension, and I don't necessarily know how long his career is going to last in the long-term future. And then Deebo Samuel, there are already talks about him potentially being traded. So I feel like if the 49ers are correct in diagnosing Purdy as someone who is going to be willing to sign immediately and willing to tie his future to the franchise, that would allow them to do a lot of things behind the scenes outside of this issue. But in terms of money, he's not going to deserve that 53 to 55 million threshold that guys like Trevor Lawrence and Tua are earning. And there might be opportunities down the line for him to restructure said contract. But right now, it's about what these guys on the higher end of the markets are earning. And right now, Dak Prescott at $60 million is the highest in terms of average annual value. So we're probably looking at Purdy sitting somewhere behind that, maybe in the $57 to $58 million range, in my opinion. But still somewhere where you have to question if this is the right decision for the 49ers. Because I would, if I were them, wait this out. Because I don't necessarily know the future of not just Purdy, but several players on this roster. So why not play the long game if you're the 49ers? Keep him on that base salary and then decide whether or not to extend or franchise tag him at the end of the year. But other than that, you'd be looking at a massive contract for someone who, yes, has appeared in a Super Bowl for you, but might not be the guy who is going to continue to lead this team to further glory. So that's the question for the 49ers. Are they willing to invest that much money in Brock Purdy for several years of mediocrity if they can't tie everyone around him to big deals? And that's going to be an integral part of that. Or are they willing to play the long game and try and find a way financially to cut a couple of corners for Brock Purdy's sake? That's a big if, but I think that this has to be on the table for the 49ers to consider. But let me know what you think about this contract situation in the comments below, because coming next, we transition over to the world of hockey. The thrilling conclusion to the Four Nations face-off last night that saw Connor McDavid score an overtime winner for Canada. We'll be right back after this short break to discuss whatever happened there.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.